All right, Genesis chapter 8.
But God remembered Noah and all the wild animals and livestock with him in the boat. He sent a wind to blow across the earth, and the floodwaters began to recede. The underground waters stopped flowing, and the torrential rains from the sky were stopped. So the floodwaters gradually receded from the earth. After 150 days, exactly 5 months from the time the flood began, the boat began to rest on the mountains of Ararat.
All right, Fred and Julia.
2.5 months later, as the waters continued to go down, other mountain peaks became visible. After another 40 days, Noah opened the window he had made in the boat and released a raven. The bird flew back and forth until the floodwaters on the earth had dried up. He also released a dove to see if the water had receded and it could find dry ground.
But the dove could find no place to land because the water still covered the ground. So it turned to the boat. It returned to the boat, and Noah held out his hand and drew the dove back inside. After waiting another 7 days, Noah released the dove again. This time the dove returned to him in the evening with a fresh olive leaf in its beak. Then Noah knew that the floodwaters were almost gone. He waited another 7 days and then released the dove again. This time it did not come back.
All right, Todd and Cherry.
And it came to pass in the 601st year, in the first month of the first day of the month, that the waters were dried up from the earth, and Noah removed the covering of the ark and looked, and indeed the surface of the ground was dry. And in the second month, on the 27th day of the month, the earth was dried. Then God spoke to Noah, saying, "Go out of the ark, and you and your wife and your sons' wives with you.
Bring out with you every living thing of all flesh that is with you, birds and cattle, every creeping thing that creeps on the earth, so that they may abound on the earth and be fruitful and multiply on the earth." So Noah went out, and his sons and his wife and his sons' wives with him. Every animal, every creeping thing, every bird, and whatever creeps on the earth, according to their families, went out of the ark.
All right, hi, Mom. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Then Noah built an altar to the Lord and took of every clean animal and of every clean bird and offered burnt offerings on the altar.
All right, sorry about that. I was going with different translations. So yeah, we are in verse 21 now, Mom.
I have to read it.
Yeah, can you please? Genesis 8, 21 and 22.
Okay. And the Lord smelled a soothing aroma. Then the Lord said in his heart, "I will never again curse the ground for man's sake, although the imagination of man's heart is evil from his youth, nor I will again destroy every living thing as I have done. While the earth remains, seed time and harvest, cold and heat, winter and summer, and day and night shall not cease."
All right.
Can Lisa get the direct Zoom link?
I'm sorry.
Because she wants to join, but she can't go through Facebook.
Yeah, do you have the actual link that you can email her?
The one that we usually use?
Yeah. Okay. All right. Anything stand out to you with this with our reading today?
That was a long time in a boat.
Yeah. Again, that's why somebody came up with 1 year or
Yeah.
over a year. I'm sorry, that was Glenn actually who came up. This is I added all the days and it was over a year, and I'm like, okay. I wasn't gonna add it. I just take his word for it. But yeah, that's a long time to be stuck in a boat.
Yeah.
Close quarters with a lot of stinky animals.
Right,
How about stinky people?
right. Yeah, that's the thing, because there's so many questions about, obviously cleanliness. There's so many questions about, is it even possible for animals and people to exist in such an environment without divine intervention? And I don't think so. I mean, even just having pet dogs or something, it's gonna be tough to be cooped up for a year. And when you think of all these animals, that's pretty tough. I know those are some of the things that went through my mind as I went inside the tour. I was just like, it's gonna take every single day, all 24 hours to, I don't know, keep things fed, keep these animals clean, just all kinds of stuff that they would need to do.
Mhm.
So we would think God had to help in that whole thing.
Mhm.
Because they would have needed to get out and walk. They couldn't just stay in the small area that they were all in, like little cages or stalls or whatever. I mean, they would need to get out and move around.
Exactly.
You would think so. After
Right.
a year, they couldn't just stand in the same small spot.
Right. Right. Good evening, Prisa. Glad you came and joined us today.
Hello, good evening.
Good
Hi.
evening.
Hi.
Hi.
Dear Prisa,
Hello, hello. Hi, Auntie.
Yeah, Prisa is one of our real close friends and one of our leaders. Actually, she's been a youth leader since I came to Hinsdale Falam, and then followed us all the way to Oasis. So she's been a good friend for a long, long time. So I'm glad
Yes.
you're checking out what we're doing.
Well, thank you. Thank you for the opportunity. Glad I'm here.
Yeah, I'm glad you're here too.
Yeah.
All right, so let's go to 20. What do you think it meant that, or 21, that the Lord was pleased with the aroma of the sacrifice?
I think he was just pleased that Noah had followed all of his directions. I mean, the
Right,
first thing he did when he got off the boat was to do that sacrifice to God. So he never gave up on him. He followed all his directions and was just thankful to have dry land again.
right, right. I think if we go to Leviticus and actually look at all the sacrifices, and it seems to me that Noah did all of them. Everything from thank offering to sin offering to what is that again? Just like a tithe offering. I don't even know what that would be. Anything from what is that again? It seems to me that Noah went down the list and says, I'm just going to give God everything. And it says here that God was really pleased with the aroma of the sacrifice. And it was then when he says, I will never curse the ground because of the human race. I'm reading from the New Living Translation. What do you think it meant when he said, I will never again curse the ground?
That he wouldn't cause another flood.
Okay, there's that aspect. Now we hear this wording in Genesis 3, where God tells Adam, cursed be the ground, cursed is the ground. We also hear it in, I think, Genesis 4, where God said to Cain, cursed is the ground. So what do you know, when you get those curses, what do you think God meant when he said, I'm not going to curse the ground anymore?
He's not going to destroy it. Like it says at the end of that I will never again destroy all living things.
Right. And I also think that verse 22 kind of goes along with that, where the planting and harvest will continue on. Because for Cain, the cursing of the ground meant that the ground will not bear fruit anymore. Right? You guys remember that? I also think that for Adam, it also was going to be hard for him to have anything grow. And God says, I'm taking that out. Now, how do we interpret that with you know what he says here? And I know I did get it that Julia said that, you know, this means that the flood isn't going to come anymore. Is there any thing else that means? Because when he says, I will never again destroy all living things, has there been any other time when God destroyed certain parts of the earth, I guess?
Sodom and Gomorrah.
Yeah.
Okay. There's Sodom and Gomorrah. And I know, go ahead, Mom. Did you want to say something?
Yeah.
'cause-
How
go
about the
ahead.
destruction of Jerusalem? How about
Okay.
the destruction of Jerusalem?
So you maybe you're talking about like wars and stuff, right? That might be a little bit different as far as destruction of all living things. And the reason I'm even bringing it up is because I don't know if any of you believe in when the whole earth became frozen. Not the whole earth, but certain parts of the earth became frozen. Does anybody remember what that's called? Ice Age. Thank you. Did anyone here actually believe in the Ice Age?
I wasn't there, so I'm not really sure.
I thought I saw you
Oh,
sitting on a mountaintop.
wait a
Or on
second.
big
Was
glacier.
that what you said, Fred? You said you were there?
No, I said I
That's
thought
what I
saw
heard. I mean,
backfired.
And I do think that a lot of people, especially theologians anyway, would say that when he said this, or a lot of critics of the Bible would say, when God said this, he didn't really mean it, or the promise wasn't really real. But I know for me, I would go with what Julia said. This is what we believe, that what God meant here was just the flood. What he meant was he was never going to destroy everything by the flood again. I do think that there are evidence of an ice age. There are evidence of things that the world, certain parts of the world got destroyed, but I don't think there is anything that ever happened where all the earth is going to be destroyed, except when Jesus, except when Jesus comes again, and every living thing except for Satan and his angels are going to be destroyed. But what God seems to promise is that as long as as long as the earth is here before he comes again, there will always be some place in the earth where there's going to be planting and harvest, that somehow, even with the seasons, during the winter, there's a whole lot of things that are going to die off, but in the spring and summer will come again. One of the things that was also that there's been studies on is that when the flood came, the earth got tilted by a few degrees, and because of that, there is the Arctic Circle on one part where it's tilted away from the sun, and then there's all these desert land that's tilted towards the sun. And so in both those places, whether it be the Sahara Desert or in Antarctica, there is really hard. It's really hard to have any harvest or planting that's happening there. But again, those are some of the questions that I know I would love to have answers on. And I know when I visited the Creation Museum, I almost wanted to buy the whole library, because I was like, there's so many questions that I wanted answers in. But at best, all we can have is theories. But I think also the only reason I'm even bringing this out is that there are a lot of Christians who would look at just this last two texts over here and say things like, yeah, see, this doesn't happen. This never, because there are, if you believe in the Ice Age, then you'd have to believe that so much of it has been destroyed. And if you believe in the flood, the earth would have all these things about planting and harvest and cold and heat, summer and winter, day and night, then there are a lot of places in the earth where this isn't happening. And if you believe that, the ground is not cursed anymore, then obviously this whole thing about weeds, this whole thing about deserts, and just places in the earth where living things can't grow because of harsh weather conditions isn't true. And for me, what I would tell those people is that we believe that this whole thing is only about the flood, and whatever else happened after that, the earth wasn't completely destroyed, but obviously big parts of the earth has been destroyed, whether it be islands being wiped out, whether it be places in the world that used to have any kind of plants or animals being covered up by the earth, et cetera, et cetera.
Well, I wonder too, from the different things that I've read, that in the beginning of the earth, supposedly there was one huge landmass. They call it Panacea or something like that. And if you look at a globe, you can see where in the Atlantic, for instance, where the Africa continent, if you put them in the South Africa or South America and Europe, if you put them together, they almost fit. And the tectonic plates where we get our earthquakes from, That is for real. They didn't know that until about 40 years ago, I think, what was causing that, or 50. So, I mean, the earth is a living thing, you know.
Right. And I never even heard about that, but man, that's really interesting stuff. And I do think that I know for me, when it comes to issues with the flood, I'm not scared to tell people I'm taking some of these things by faith, even though there are so many holes here that I just can't explain, you know. And I know for me, maybe that's the main thing I wanted to bring out, because there's a lot of theories out there on what happened and how our earth is actually even existing today. And I would say that we don't know a lot of things. I don't know. I don't really have a percentage, but I would go with anywhere from 50% to higher of things we don't know, because, you know, we can't explain it away. And the sad part for me is that many Christians have given up creation because of those questions. And I know for me, I would say that there's way too much, there's way too many, too much proof that we are living in intelligent design, that we have a God that designed everything intelligently, that the flood actually happened and destroyed so many things. But there's also a lot of things out there that we can't explain away. But to actually go, to actually throw the whole thing because you can't explain it, for me anyway, that would take more faith for me.
Well, that's what I've heard. I've heard it takes more faith to believe in evolution than it does in creation, because there's still too many unanswered questions that don't make sense with evolution.
Right.
And the flood seems like there's so many evidence for the flood that it's hard to refute it. You know, when you think of the Grand Canyon and different rock formations, and I mean, how in the world can you find fossils of fish on top of mountains? That just doesn't make sense, other than the flood.
Right. All right. Is there anything else? If there's nothing else, I'm going to stop the recording.
Thank you for joining us at our prayer and Bible study session as we journey through the Bible one chapter at a time. We realize that you might have some questions or comments on the things that we discussed today. And if you do, please feel free to fill out the form below. Also, if you would like to have your own Bible, please fill out the form below and we will get back to you as soon as we possibly can. Thank you so much for joining us. We hope to see you next time at our prayer and Bible study session.